Hey guys, Captain Lance here. Bear with me as I try to give a good, fairly encompassing guide on crafting belts, amulets, and rings for elemental damage mostly. So today I went and bought about 15x worth of crafting supplies and essences and some fossils in some annulment orbs and in some of the beast crafting recipes for removing a prefix, adding a suffix. Today I'm going to start with belts to begin with, and the reason is they're the easiest to do, and I'll show that by first thing when you're doing any sort of crafting, go over to PODB mods. This site right here is invaluable for, I guess, targeting what you're trying to craft. So for me, I'm doing a guide on crafting elemental damage on these things. So looking at the mod list, the reason I say belts are the easiest, you come here, you can go to jewelry and you can select amulets, rings, or belts. Right now, these are the suffixes and prefixes you can craft on a belt. If I go over to rings, you can see the suffixes like double, and so do the prefixes. There's a lot more things that can roll, and therefore you have a lot more diluted pool of mods. So basically, you can brick your items a lot easier with bad mods on belts, or not on belts, on rings and amulets. Amulets, again, huge mod pool. So we're going back to belts. We're looking, okay, this is our mod pool. Now, I said I'm crafting for elemental damage. I'm going to be doing this with fossils. The specific fossils you want to use when you're crafting for damage, always prismatic. I mean, if you're doing elemental, of course. It adds +1 to elemental damage with tax. It helps for resist mods. You can never go wrong with getting a resist mod on a belt. And it gives you a chance at getting this mod. So it gives you an additional elemental damage mod. So you could have that and your elemental damage with attacks on a belt. So there's 2 damage mods. On top of that, I'm going to do 3 fossils. I'm going to throw in Scorched and Metallic. Now the reason, where is Metallic? I'm like blind. Okay. Now the reason for doing that is, for one, when you see I do Scorched, it takes off the possibility of getting cold resistance, so it lessens the suffix pool, which is helpful for getting this damage mod here. And on top of that, it also gives me a chance to get fire damage as a mod. So that way I could have a triple damage belt. So I could have, say I'm doing something where my build's focused around fire damage, I can have elemental damage land, I can have fire damage land, and I can have elemental damage with attacks. Now I'm also doing metallic for the specific reason of getting rid of this useless mod, physical damage to melee attacks. This mod it's utter garbage, no one wants it. You see it on a belt, you could see it on a belt with 5 T1s and you'd see this and it'd be a huge eyesore. It's just, you don't want to see that on a belt. Metallic Fossil removes that from the possibilities because it makes it so you can't roll physical modifiers. It also adds lightning damage. Now, there's some pluses and minuses to this. The bad thing is if you roll fire and lightning damage, for the most part, most builds don't use both of those damage modifiers. Pretty much the only thing that uses both of those is Stormfire builds, where you're trying to ignite with lightning damage, in which case these are both good mods. And then on top of that, this would get a good mod. So if I got all 3 of these mods, that'd be a great Stormfire belt, more or less. But at that point, you'd probably be doing Stormfire with spells, because if you're doing an attack belt with Stormfire, the reality is you're using the Didion Dawn, the burn faster belt, because even all 3 of these damage mods won't compete with that for attack ignites. Okay, moving on. So more or less this is just to show you why I'm crafting with the fossils I'm crafting with and what I'm aiming for. I'm basically aiming for triple damage. Now on top of that, I should probably mention this before I move on. All these mods have an item level. I mean, you can't roll them without hitting this item level. It's a pretty simple thing, but it's good to learn it. You know, I don't know if people have told you this before, if you're new, but more or less, you can go to this site and it'll tell you what item levels you need to roll certain mods, or the highest tiers of certain mods. I specifically am getting item level 86 belts to roll the highest tier of elemental damage with attacks. There's other things like you need to hit item level 84 to hit the highest tier of resist mods. Other than that, I guess there's the highest tier of these for 85. But basically, there's a few mods you get at getting to item level 86. At the beginning of the league, buying an item level 86 belt is going to be super expensive. The reality is you'll be able to get a belt that's pretty much just as good at item level 81. It'll just be a few percent less, and it'll be a fraction of the cost. So if you're crafting yourself a belt at the beginning of the league, you probably want to buy a lower eye level belt, but right now it's mid-league. These belts aren't expensive. I bought a bunch of item level 86 belts for about 5C a pop. Okay, one last thing about these bases. They're all item level 86. You can see it when you press Alt and hold your cursor over an item, and it'll show you what item level they are. The last thing I did is I threw on Turbulent Catalyst. That's these things right here. You basically scour these so they're normal items, and then it only takes one Turbulent Catalyst for 5%. So you need 4 to get this thing to 20%. So what this does is whatever elemental damage modifiers I have on these belts, they're going to be 20% better, more or less. And on top of that, I don't know if it's hearsay or rumor, but I'm pretty sure the devs, some people at GGG mentioned that if you roll for a specific quality, the belts will be weighted towards rolling those types of modifiers. So these belts will be more likely to roll elemental damage modifiers than they will other modifiers. That's basically the gist of it. Now let's get started crafting. So I got a bunch of these triple alchemical resonators. I will say that with these things, I always use the alchemical resonators over chaotic, specifically because they cost less. It takes a little bit more time to scour every single one of these belts I'm going to craft, but each time I scour, I'm saving about a chaos or so. Well, it depends on which resonator you're doing, but basically it's pretty much alchemical resonators cost about, I don't know, a C less per resonator for every type of one you get. Alright, so let's go ahead and start throwing these on. So basically when I'm looking for triple damage, I get resist, I get damage. Right here, here's kind of a notable belt, and here is a pretty notable belt. Okay, so all these belts you'll see, they're pretty consistently rolling resist modifiers, they're pretty consistently rolling at least one damage modifier, and occasionally two. So basically what you see is, because the belt's mod pool is so small, it's very likely you're going to land on mods you want. And that's what ends up happening with these, and that's why belts are easy to craft. Now, starting off looking at this belt and this one over here, you see here's the double damage modifier. This is the sad case scenario where you get fire and lightning, and that's only good if you're doing a storm fire build for the most part, or a build that for whatever reason converts lightning to fire. But that's pretty much only the Shaper Cloak. I'm spacing on the name of it, but more or less this is a pretty good belt. I can craft life on it, and I can probably sell it for 50 chaos or whatever, and I spent 10 chaos so far to make it or whatever. This belt is also a good belt for any just lightning attack based skill, or any lightning spell skill too. It doesn't matter, it's not picky. So these belts are both kind of already decent, and that was just with the first run through. So I'm going to start scouring the ones that didn't really hit interesting mods. Okay, I already scoured those. set these off to the side so I just don't start messing with them. Lightning damage. Armor's kind of like, I don't really care about armor. I don't think it's that worthwhile. Trash. Pretty trash. Trash. So I'm going to go again. Bad resists. Bad. Bad. So the goal is basically try to get it. We're going for 3 damage rolls that all line up, along with, you know, resist would be nice, and life would also be good. Like forgetting which ones I'm using. Which is fantastic. Okay, it's scorched. I was very scuffed on how I'm doing these, but okay. That one's pretty freaking good. Those are okay, so here's another one where we hit double good resist on top of tier 1 elemental damage with attacks and lightning damage and mana, which isn't the end of the world. I can still craft life. Well, actually I can't craft life. So that's kind of scuffed for a life build. Best case scenario is you have somebody that's using mom, like agnostic, or somebody that's just an ES build. So, but this still works for an ES build. Like, pretty freaking good, honestly. So, now we're gonna put in the keep pile for now. Okay. 2 more kind of iffy builds. And the reason for using Stygian Vise is, with being able to insert an Abyssal Jewel, you basically can customize it, and these can be used for life builds, they can be used for energy shield builds, and Stygian Vises are just good in just so many scenarios, because basically you can get a life and then you can get an onslaught on kill, and for mapping that's like, that's huge, being able to have onslaught on kill, because it's just basically 20% attack speed, movement speed. It just feels good type of gameplay. Okay. Okay, these are all cleared. Okay. So these are all kind of iffy. This one's decent, but the stun and block and recovery, that's just painful to look at. To make this one decent, I'd have to remove the suffix of stun and block recovery and then hit like life or something. But that cost me like 30 C to get the beast for doing that, and I just don't think it's worth it. It's a pretty low chance. Again, these belts are all kind of iffy. It hurts to have armor roll, because then you can't throw life on a belt. It takes the prefix spot. This hit triple damage, but unfortunately it's lightning and fire, and it's got iffy resist, so they're not anything to write home about. These are all kind of ones I would just roll over. So go again for more. Okay, let's get more scours. Okay. Go through, wipe these belts. They're on. These all hit pretty much nothing. Hit strength, which is nice, but nothing worth keeping. Hit lightning damage. Horrible life. That one's probably gutted. Life resist. Double lightning damage. So this one's a keep. So it's a shame it hit 12 to 17 fire resistance, but I can still go and slam another 40 resists. I can just go over to my crafting bench. I think it's 40 resists, is that right? Or maybe it's less. No, it's 40. I can go over here, say it has fire and lightning, and I craft fire and cold, and all of a sudden that's a 90 resist, 70 life, 60 damage belt for somebody doing Stormfire with spells. So that's a keep. I don't know how common people are doing Stormfire for spells, but personally I wouldn't want to roll over because there's a lot of times I've rolled Stormfire with spells, and so this would be an amazing belt for that. Alright, so we got 2 more. Let's try to craft these a little bit better. Oh my goodness. It just, holy freaking crap. That is insane. So that is almost 5 T1s. So that's this belt, but on steroids, because it hits the resists on top of better life and strength. So Stormfire for spells, depending on what spells you're using, you might end up needing some strength based on what you're using. So I would just craft life on it and call this one set. This also could be, if you're going ES, you could also craft energy shield, or you could just craft 20% more damage, I think you can craft. Just straight up. Holy crap. Increased damage. Let's go to the belts. Yeah, you can craft up to 20% more damage. So this could be an 80% damage, 90% resist, 50 strength. So that could be fantastic for ES Stormfire or Life Stormfire. Either way, it's going to be a sick belt. Okay, that's nothing. That's T1, but nothing. Okay, let's see what we got fossils wise. Looks like I have about 10 more of each of these fossils. I'll do 10 more on trying to craft one more belt, see if we can hit something sick. I was hoping for triple damage, but I don't think doesn't look like I'm hitting it. We'll see if I do with these. But after this, we're going to move on to doing rings and amulets, which are harder to craft, but they have a better upside, because basically, for the most part, it's pretty known that belts are easier to craft, so good belts are less expensive than good rings and good amulets, if that makes sense. This is more or less just an easy way to craft yourself something if you're looking for an upgrade on your belt. And that is an upgrade if I've ever seen one. Holy crap. That is 2 really nice resists, plus the elemental damage modifier, plus tier 1 elemental damage with attacks. So this can be for life or ES easily. Again, you can just craft either one and it works, and it's universal. If somebody's doing fire build, if they're doing cold, if they're doing lightning, doesn't matter, because whatever we got on there, it applies. This one's good enough that I would consider slamming it. So the reason I craft on an uninfluenced base, so if we come over to here, there's all these influences. Basically, they add new special mods you can roll on items. And if I go through and I see, if I had a Shaper Belt, I could roll Abyssal Cry, I could roll Increased Energy Shield, I could roll Reduced Damage from Critical Strikes, Energy Shield Recovery Rate. Basically, you see, it adds a ton of mods, and a lot of times they might not synergize with what you're trying to craft for necessarily. So, say I'm somebody who's doing a life build and it's an attack based build, most of these rolls they wouldn't help me and they would just dilute the pool. But with the new influence exalt orbs, you can pretty much target specific mods you might want. So say I have this insane belt that's good for attacks right now. Redeemer's suffixes are insane for attack builds because you could roll attack damage for projectiles, attack speed. Mana recovery rate's kind of like iffy. It's good for some builds, but otherwise it's kind of a brick. Let's see. On this specific belt, I have an open prefix. Yeah, so I have 2 prefixes, 3 good suffixes. So when I'm looking at these mods, I'd want to be looking at the suffixes for what I could slam on with a exalted orb of each type. Increased evasion rating, that's kind of whatever. Flasks effect, that's good, but I'm looking at my odds being pretty bad. It's very high I get a useless suffix or prefix. Lower I get a good prefix. Looking at Crusader, I'll be honest, most of the mods for Crusader, the prefixes are a good case scenario. So if I rolled increased energy shield, this is no longer a life belt, but it is a tier 1 energy shield belt. If I roll critical strike chance, that's nothing but damage. Because a lot of people roll with, what are they called? Skitterbots. And Skitterbots always shock people. So that's crit's good, that's damage for the most people. A lot of people roll with that. Lightning damage. Again, it narrows down. This belt only works with lightning damage builds now, but it's tier 1 for lightning damage builds. So there's a lot of rolls I could get here that are just straight upgrades for the belt. Fortify when you stun an enemy. This is kind of, we don't want this. This would be, it narrows the belt down to being only usable with builds that stun and do elemental damage, and there's not many people that build into stun. So at the end of the day, if you're building into stun, chances are Fortify might already be a link in your damage. You're picking it up somewhere along the way with attack builds. So this would be a brick. But this is where weighting comes into it. This has a 250 weighting, which is a lot lower than 500. So basically my odds of bricking the item are, let's see, 1500 plus another 1500 plus another 1500. So it's 4500 and 250. So, for example, say if I'm trying to wager my odds at bricking the item with the Crusader's Orb, I'm looking at my chances of 250 over 4750. So it's like a 5% chance I brick the item, 95% chance I get nothing but gravy if I roll a Crusader Orb on it. Hunters. Holy crap. All the mods are good. Life, gain flash charge on crit strike, chance to flask to not consume charges. All those mods are good. Nothing could go wrong there other than rolling 3 to 6 or, yeah, if you roll 3 to 6, that sucks, but it's still a positive. The other thing to think about is Crusader's Orb or Hunter's Orb is the most expensive. I think it's probably around 400C right now. I haven't checked recently. But we'll just go through and check right now. Okay, it's at 330. Last time I bought one, it was 400C. But it's generally, all the other orbs are 200C or less, and Hunter's is the most expensive. But if I get either of these, that's just a good case scenario. Especially this. If I land that mod, it would be pretty insane. Warlord, it kind of just looks to me like I would brick the item. Armor, not a good mod. Not many builds use it. Added fire against burning damage, probably not very significant depending on what type of build you're rolling. Fire damage would be good, but I wouldn't want to exalt this with Warlords. So if you go through, look at this, Crusader's Exalted Orb would be probably the best case scenario, or not best case scenario. It would be most likely you get a mod that just works, more or less. Hunters also same case scenario, but it's more expensive. I would say chance for flasks, you not to consume charges. That one kind of is just like iffy. It's basically like, I don't know. Usually you don't fill your flasks until you're facing a boss, and it's just like 10% chance you get more flasks. I don't know. It's hard for people to justify it being something that's like, oh, that's a feels good, or I know that's going to be good, because there's a 90% chance it does nothing for you, you know? So it's hard to see when that actually happens, because when I'm in a boss fight, I'm not exactly just staring at my flasks down here, you know, watching which ones didn't get consumed and keeping track of that. But anyways, I think this one I'm gonna throw a Hunter's Exalted Orb at. We'll do that later, but that's the best belt. These are all pretty good for the most part, right? Yeah, those are my keep pile. See, out of these, whichever one's the worst, we might try to recraft. Yeah, so I think this one, well, that's pretty much the same as... Nope, that belt's better. It has life. This belt's better. It has better resist and a strength mod. Okay, I think out of all the belts, this one's probably the worst. So I'll recraft over this one because I already have all these socketed. See if we can hit something else interesting. Generally, you'd probably just want to buy another 5C base and try to sell the thing as what it's crafted, but I don't want to take extra time. And so there's the triple damage. Unfortunately, it's fire, lightning, attack. That's kind of dead because, as I said before, Didion Dawn exists. If you're igniting with an attack skill, you're using that belt. You're not using this build. It's dead. Dead. This hurts, but stun and block recovery is just garbage, and the life roll's bad. I don't think there's really any saving that item to bring it back to greatness. So this is basically the same belt as this belt. 2 tier 1 resistances. So this is the problem with crafting with metallic and scorched, is you got decent odds for hitting both your fire and lightning damage, and you get belts like this. So I guess the reality, I should say, is if you want to craft a really good storm fire belt, that for spell damage at least, this is the way to do it. I think I'm going to end up stopping there. I don't want to roll over any of those belts. Stormfire isn't necessarily that meta, but the reality is those are good belts, and I can't get myself to just roll over them for now, at least. Okay, next up we're going to do is amulets. So to start off, I guess I would just show this real quick in case people don't know this. I'm doing a shaper-based amulet. I'll go real quickly and I'll show you why. Shaper-based, so let's go. Amulets. These are basically, I'm trying to craft an amulet for myself for a build I'm going to make, and I specifically want this mod right here. Damage penetrates elemental resistances. I guess they took out 8 to 10. It no longer happens. It's a 0 probability. So sad, but the mod is still very strong even at 4 to 7 range. So the painful part about this, you look over these mods and there's some good ones like Fizzazz, movement speed. A lot of these mods don't make an amulet for the build I'm trying to make. I'm going to make a build that uses Void Forge, and it's also going to use elemental equilibrium. So These Fizz's extra mods, they just brick my build. Because if I'm always dealing 15% of Fizz is cold, and I'm using Elemental Equilibrium, then I'll hit with cold and fire, which then makes it so those resistances the next time I hit them are higher. So say my sword picks fire, I hit with cold and fire, and then the next time I hit them, my sword picks cold, the monster I'm hitting them with 25% more elemental resistances. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Elemental Equilibrium is right over here. 25 resistances if you hit them with that element previously. So Void Forge, it picks one of those elements each time, and if I have one of these rolls on my amulet, it basically ruins elemental equilibrium, because more than likely I'm going to keep bricking my next hit rather than giving myself good odds to hit them with a different element that they have 50 minus res for. But the upside is these rolls are really good for most builds that use Fizz converted to elemental. So the upside is, A, I might craft a really good amulet for somebody else and I can sell it and keep funding my crafts. This stuff right here, for the most part, you don't want these rolls. These are bricked rolls. They do nothing for you. Unfortunately, they're super common. There's a lot of them. They kind of brick a suffix. Block. A lot of these other rolls are all just kind of, they're just good things. Like a lot of builds use cold or fire damage over time multiplier. There's a huge damage buff. Quantity is expensive because quantity farmers have all the money in the world and they'll pay for tier 1 quantity items. Increased attributes, there's a lot of attribute stacking builds. For the most part, since there's Awakener's Orbs, and you can use Awakener's Orbs to combine increased attributes with somebody with an increased dexterity amulet, for example, the attributes is kind of just meh, but depending on what else you get on the amulet, it could be a very good thing. So I'm adding a huge amount of mods. A lot of them are good mods, so hopefully we'll see when I'm crafting these amulets whether or not it ends up feeling good to craft them, or I just see myself breaking a lot of amulets with all these extra mods. So I bought item level 86 amulets. You'll see these right here. One thing to know, just to save yourself some money, there's a vendor recipe where if you craft a skill gem of each color, or if you sell a skill gem of each color with a random amulet, it'll turn it into an onyx amulet. So say I have an amulet and I have skill gem of each color, it becomes an onyx amulet. So you'll see that with the other ones here. The only reason I'm doing this is it saves me like 10C per amulet or so. I'll show you on the trade site real quick. It's basically, you go over here, you go item level 86, Shaper. If you're looking for an amulet, it's 10C, right? And most of those are garbage amulets. They're amulets that do rarity, couple life regen. They're absolutely useless. Onyx amulet is pretty much just, it's just good all around for whatever build you end up making. They're 20C, 25C, 30C. So just take the couple seconds to buy an amulet that's not an onyx amulet, you know, for 20C less, and just buy a couple of those skill gems from the vendor, and all of a sudden you got yourselves some onyx amulets. Oh shoot, this is one thing where I did not count very well. I forgot to get more turbulent catalysts, so I'm going to do that right now actually, because I need those basically for crafting these bases, because I want to throw on the increased effect of elemental damage, so that way I have a higher chance of rolling penetration or elemental damage with attacks. All those sorts of rolls, they have higher probability. Now I get to spam a bunch of people until somebody responds. Okay, somebody responded. Fantastic. This league I actually made pretty much the majority of my currency with crafting. I played a decent amount, just having fun early on in the league, and I don't know, I made 10 to 20x from just playing the game. But then I crafted a bunch, and I made a lot more currency with that, and I blew it on other stuff, which I'll probably end up making videos about the stuff I crafted later, or other types of crafting methods and what you can do. But with crafting these amulets, I chose to do Deafening Essences of Scorn. I bought all these for around 12C. If you buy them in bulk, you're going to be paying 20C, 30C, somewhere in that range. If you're going to buy, like, I don't know, 20 at a time or something. I kind of went around buying one at a time, so I spent a lot of time doing that. But you'll see they guarantee crit multi of 35 to 41. So the reason I think that's valuable to craft with is you'll notice on, so we're on amulets. One thing that is good about amulets is they can roll crit multi very high, up to 35 to 38. This isn't really a modifier you get on any other piece of gear, and it's super powerful for damage. It's also, on top of that, since there's such a huge suffix pool, and on top of that I'm going to be doing a shaper item, so there's actually an even larger suffix pool, like you'll see, just all these suffixes, and they all have 1,000 to roll. It's pretty low chance I get multi, and on top of that it's a low chance I get good multi. So I'm going to take the chance with essence crafting, with guaranteed tier 1 multi, best multi I can get on an amulet, and then just hope I can roll a couple other good mods, and at the end of the day I'll have some really good damage amulets. So we're just going to go through, throw these on, see what we get. That one's already going to be pretty strong for the build I'm doing, because I'm going to be doing a Void Forge. So this one's already somewhat of a keeper, at least as a baseline for the build I'm making. It's got Fizz, it's got multi, it's got life. I can even craft on elemental damage with attacks, or I can craft on a resist. This is just kind of a win for my build that I'm going to be making. Holy crap, that's another pretty good amulet. I mean, it doesn't have a Fizz, it has movement speed instead, and it has mana, which is kind of just, I don't care about mana for my build. But it's still pretty nice amulet, because movement speed's cool. This one hits energy shield, spell damage, quantity. What the heck am I looking at? So this one feels like it could feel good if I annul the mana gained on kill or the evasion rating. Energy shield's good, spell damage is good, multi's good, quantities, people like quantity. I don't use it too much, but people love it. I bought annulment orbs for this. Take something good. And I got rid of evasion. That's probably a keeper. You can throw energy shield on that. You can throw damage. What all can you craft on an amulet? Let's see. Energy shield. That's kind of iffy. But what else? There's better things, I think. Damage while leeching. You could craft 30 damage on that. That seems pretty crazy. Prod speed damage, area effect damage. So, since they have, I think ever since they introduced Energy Shield Leech Gem support, the damage while leeching is just, it's a huge mod. That's just the reality of it. So for somebody spellcasting and leeching, that's 43 damage, that's 40 multi. That's a pretty good amulet. Let's see. This is kind of, it's not really anything, because if you're attribute stacking, you don't really want, you want increased intelligence, increased attributes. So these are both worth rolling over, I guess, because we're crafting things. Okay, those mods, life, spell damage, multi, I don't think I care too much about. Keep rolling, because again, okay, max quantity. Do people care about hitting tier 1 quantity? That's the thing I don't even know if they do or not. Like if I go to here and I just start increased quantity of items found, I type, I think tier 1's 8%. I just search for that. Okay, Apparently quantity amulets are worth at least 1x. What about a quantity amulet with global critical strike multiplier? Okay, well I guess they're just 1x. But still, it's I don't know. I for the life of me will never understand quantity people, but I guess they like what they like. I don't know. I don't get it, but I probably should keep that just because apparently it's worth an X. Energy shield rarity dex, nothing. 2 resists, multi. This one's good for an energy shield build because I can go and I can just craft 10 to 14 energy shield. I don't want to look at that. Okay, 14. Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate. I had a lot more essences to use, but I think these are all pretty much keepers. Like, I shouldn't roll them over. I should sell them before rolling over them, unfortunately. Well, fortunately for me, but I was hoping to do more crafting with those essences. I'll put these in here for now. But I definitely made profit on those. If I spent, I don't know, 240C, and I definitely made more than a couple X on those amulets. And I made an amulet for myself that'll be really strong. Okay, now moving on to the last thing, which is going to be crafting rings. So these are all item level 86 rings. Again, I threw on the turbulent catalyst for elemental damage. Now with these rings, this is what I'll say about ring crafting and doing it with fossils. So we go over to the ring section. We look at these. You go all the way down to the delve mods. Where are they? I rolled right past them. But the mods that are normally something like, oh, you get 20% of this damage or whatever, are leech to life. These mods, in my mind, they're super dead. You can get leech 5 ways to Sunday. If you're playing an attack build, it's everywhere on the tree. You can get leech. You don't need this leech. If you're playing a spell build, they have the energy shield leech. They have leech if you're playing a Hierophant. Leech is everywhere. At the end of the day, these are kind of dead mods for delve. On top of that, the life mod, which you get with a pristine fossil, is life recovery from flasks. As far as I'm concerned, for the most part, flasks, this mod is pretty dead. Not a lot of builds use life flasks. A lot of times you have overleech, or you have super high regen, or you have, frankly, you have mana flasks that can do more for your life if you're playing with Indigon. That's a dead mod. This mod right here is a fantastic mod, but unfortunately, if you're crafting with a dense fossil, it also gives you this mod as a possibility, and this mod as a possibility, and along with making these mods more common. This mod, and I think there's one for armor, is there not? There might not be. But my point is, you start adding in all these extra mods that are just kind of dead mods for yourself, and your fossil crafting suddenly becomes, you just keep hitting these bad mods and it just hurts. So this mod, prismatic fossils, is nothing but gold right here. So that's what we're going to be crafting with, because we want to see these mods. We want to see it with elemental damage with attack. Pretty much all the other mods from fossils are not good. This is good if you're doing a Val skill build, but these fossils are a fortune, and you should spend that somewhere else if you're going to make your build good. I guess if you're doing a Val skill build, you're rich anyways. Ailments. This is good for poison, bleed, ignite builds, but unfortunately with corroded fossils, it takes out elemental modifiers, which means you don't hit resist mods, and you end up with well, I can actually show you, because I tried this. You end up with a ring like this. A ring that has damage with ailments, but that it has nothing else. I mean, it has life gained on hit, but I'm playing lacerate. I'm not hitting that fast, you know. That gives me 100 life every 2 seconds. That's not worth anything. Life recovery from flasks. I can recover 20% over 2,000, which is only half my life. Not really worth that much. So, I was crafting with pristine and corroded, and this is what I came out with. After the craft, I wasted some money and I didn't get good rings. So, I'm going to stick to what I know, and that's crafting with prismatic fossils. I'll show you an end result of one I did, which turned out really well, which is this ring. I hit elemental damage plus tier 1 elemental damage with attacks, and then I had fizz, and then I had evasion. And I beast crafted to remove the evasion, which threw on T1 intelligence, which at that point this is a tier 1 ring for any Hands of Wisdom and action build. And so I decided to Crusader's Exalt Orb for the chance of getting a conductivity on hit. Unfortunately I hit reduce curse effect. The other possibility was a increased crit chance. So there's a good chance I get nothing but damage, but reduce curse effect on you it's pretty strong. A lot of Howa builds play Guardian, which one of his nodes is Exile. Reduce curse effect, and you start getting real close to not feeling curses at all, which is just kind of a feels good. Not really necessary or good for bossing, but for mapping it feels good to just be able to roll a curse map and just be able to run it because your build doesn't care about curses. See how well this works. Okay, let's get some prismatic fossils out. Okay. And some scours. So, time to see if we hit some gold on these. Again, these are all item level 86, and I did the Turbulent Catalyst for elemental damage. So right off the bat, this ring's already a pretty sick ring. Hit double damage. That's good resist, but nothing else. Resist damage. Resist. Really low damage. So that ring's actually already insane. That one, I probably can just end up either exalting it or craft a suffix or prefix of my choosing and move on. So that it's honestly pretty insane. That's probably a 10x ring. But the rest of these rings, that's double damage. I'm gonna keep this one for now, but I might roll over it later. But these other ones aren't really sellable. Okay. This one hit 2 good mods, but ideally, my rule of thumb is 3 good mods are worth considering keeping, or 2 of the highest possibility roll mods, and then maybe you try to beast craft to hit another good mod and then be able to craft 1 good mod. I think at the point where you have, it's like right here, it's actually, that's lightning resistance. For whatever reason, I thought that said elemental damage. So I actually am probably not going to keep that one. Okay, anyways. I'm going to keep crafting. But my rule of thumb is I'm looking for at least 3 mods that work together that are good, along with being able to craft the mod. So this one has 2 decent resist mods, the elemental damage mod, Fizz to attack. This just works for a this is pretty good for a physical build, and for any other build it's a pretty decent ring, because I can still craft life on that, or elemental damage to attacks, depending on if I'm a energy shield build or not. These other rings, again, didn't really hit anything. Let's keep going. Yeah, it's still pretty much nothing. These stacked out again. fossils. Oh, crap. Oh, I'm stupid. Mistakes were made. Okay. Just pretend you didn't see that. Okay. Damage, lightning damage, variety. Resist. So this one, it's a suffix. I thought regen life might have been a prefix. If it was a prefix, I would have tried the 50-50 on removing that prefix to add a decent suffix and see if I hit like a resist or something. But for the most part, I think all these rings are not good enough to keep. These are all just bad. Again, they're all kind of mediocre to bad. Okay. This one hit two mods we really like, elemental damage with attacks and elemental damage. It hit two bad resists, which is, they're unfortunate because they take up crafting spots. At the end of the day, it's still a resist, it still helps, but the prefixes, the fizz and the lightning, are just painful to look at. If I can remove one of those and be able to craft life, this is a usable ring for somebody. It's a decent ring. So we'll take the chance, remove fizz or life. Instead we removed the fire resist. Okay, so here's an example where we use a beast. I was hoping I'd get one of these. I thought I'd have more of these examples where I would need a beast, but I removed one of the crappy resist mods. So now I have basically two bad prefixes, one good prefix. So I have a 60% chance to remove a bad prefix and add a suffix that could be a good suffix. So we come over here and we go to, I'm just going to type in prefix. It says add a suffix, remove a prefix. It's this Ferric Lynx alpha guy. Pretty much use this guy a lot when crafting because he costs about 13 C to, or 10 to 15 C usually what he costs. But he's been unethically kind to me this league. Unfortunately, he removed the ring's dead. He removed the elemental damage with attacks, and now the ring is garbage. So it just goes into the trash pile. This ring hit they're all just kind of okay mods, but they're all decent mods. I don't know. That might be keepable. Because I could still roll a damage mod. I don't know. I'd have to look up on the trade wiki if that'll actually sell for something or not. At this point, I think it's a good ring, but cold attack build might like that. I'm not 100% sure, but I start to just keep the rings that land on decent stuff, so I have something to show for and look at selling later on. These are all kind of the okay rings. That's the unethical ring. Okay. At the end of the day, a lot of times when you're crafting, you might start out trying to craft something for yourself, and you'll end up most of the time crafting items that are good for other people. And in the case where it's an item that's good for somebody else, you sell that item and you buy an item that's more relevant to your build. For example, this ring that I crafted was going to be insane for my build until it slammed on T1 intelligence. My builds, I'm not going to need intelligence. Intelligence is dead stat for me. I was just going to take the 100 damage ring, fizz which would help, and then throw on life and be happy. But since it's slammed on T1 intelligence, this is a super ideal ring for any Hawa build. Any intelligence stacking build like Hawa, This is tier 1 item, so I have to sell it and move on. Okay, need more scour orbs. Which, that's just the case. That's just what happens a lot of the times when you're doing crafting. Is you craft something good for somebody else, you gotta sell it, and... Okay, so... this is something I should mention. When you beastcraft, or exalt an item, or... I think regal an item? Regal, I think, takes off 5%, but basically, since I beastcrafted this ring, it lost all of its quality, so you have to re-go and throw on more quality. So if you do that in the middle of a recipe and you're wondering where the heck did my quality go, the beastcraft removes the quality. Okay, cold damage, resist. I don't know. Those are two decent mods, but looking at the other mods, it's just not worth keeping. Roll over those. Dead. Dead. Okay. So, this ring having mana and energy shield, it's cool because it's got 2 damage mods, lightning damage and elemental damage again. If you're using a spell, this thing feels pretty good. I guess you could just end up crafting a resist on it. I was going to say I might try to remove the energy shield or the mana, but and craft on another suffix. So that way you could craft on life, but at the end of the day, if you're an energy shield build, mana, energy shield, your spellcaster, you for the most part want those mods. So they're not dead enough to want to remove them and try to craft on something else. And I can craft a resist on that, which feels good. This ring has all elemental resistances. Cold damage. Yeah, it's just 2 good mods. Roll over it. Man, that hurts to have a low wed on that, but it's dead. Is this ring dead? This ring feels like it wants to be good if I can remove the 4 crafted life within a null orb. Do you want to be a good ring? What did I remove? I'm totally spacing on what the, I removed strength. That's what it was. I was like, what was the other mod? So, it kind of hurts to remove. Well, actually, it doesn't hurt to remove strength, because now this ring, it wants to be even better than it was before. That's what it wants to be, the ultimate freaking ring. I can tell. So we're gonna go over to the menagerie, and we're going to remove the 4 crafted life, and we're going to hit a tier 1 resist. That's what's gonna happen, people. Because it decided it didn't want to just be a good ring; it wanted to be an amazing ring.
You are truly a survivor.
See what I'm talking about? Yeah, added intelligence. That's a good freaking... That's another... Why do I keep crafting Howa rings? See, this is... My crafting keeps telling me to make a Howa build. This is a pretty insane ring for Howa because we get intelligence, we get double resist, we get lightning damage to attacks, we get elemental damage with attacks. All that stuff is... That's gravy for a Howa build. Just gonna craft life on it and move on. Okay, so this ring's pretty insane. This ring is also pretty insane. I can craft a lot of things that work for it. This ring might be worth slamming. We're gonna see. Think about it. Okay. We're going to roll over any of these rings. So this is where you start thinking, yeah, that's just resistance life. That's not anything super special, right? Yeah. So really what I should be doing is buying more bases and trying to just craft different bases and maybe look at selling these rings and stuff, but that would take more time to look up stuff. So, or actually, you know what? I can just pause this, go buy some more bases and do that. So that's what we're gonna do actually. So I went to record me crafting another 5 base rings with like 40 prismatics, and I forgot to turn my mic on, so I was basically just talking to no one for 10 minutes. And moral of the story is I basically crafted 2 more okay rings, nothing to speak of, but then after that I decided, after looking over the wiki, these 2 really good items I'm going to end up slamming with the Hunters and Redeemer's Exalted Orbs. So just quickly remind you guys what we're looking for here. I think these go to belts. With the belts, we're looking at getting increased maximum life, or a chance to not consume charges, or a chance to gain a flash charge when I do a deal a critical strike. This is the absolute best case scenario, and 7 to 10% life is also insane. The other 2 mods will just be, it'll just be an improvement and make the belt even better. Other than that, the ring, I basically looked through all the mods. The only thing that's just nothing but damage is the Redeemer's one. Accuracy is damage, Frostbite is damage. It makes it so we can only really market it to cold damage builds, but it'll be an insane for cold damage builds. Attack speed is just damage. So basically, it's all damage, increased effect on. So that's increased effect of shock, basically, or chill. So Redeemer's suffix is nothing but damage, so it's got nothing but upside, more or less. So that is what we are looking for. So let's go ahead and slam these and see what we get. Oh, 3 to 6 life. That hurts, but it is what it is. Let's see what the Redeemers gets us. It gets us accuracy. So that's just nothing but damage right there. At the end of the day, I think these are pretty insane items. We'll see what I end up being able to sell them for. In this crafting session, I spent about 18 exalts. I had a stack of like 31 earlier, and then I spent it all on crafting materials, and so I crafted a bunch of things. So we'll see if it was worth it. I think it really was, because I crafted some pretty crazy items. I think I'll be able to sell them, but you know, that's just how crafting works. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe this inspires you to craft your own items, or helps you understand more about how crafting items works with fossils or essences, and crafting on jewelry items like rings, belts, and amulets. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to start streaming pretty regularly. You can stop by my stream, check it out. Let me know what you think. So, you guys have a good one. Captain Lance out.